Hello and welcome. This is the Astrology of the Week Ahead podcast. I'm your host, your astro bestie, hopefully, Chani Nicholas. And in this episode, we are going to talk about the very, underline, very important week of September 30th. It is a very important week because in it, we have the very last eclipse in Libra near the South Node that we will have for a couple of decades, give or take a year or two. So this is the ending of something. This is us coming to a close with a certain situation in our life and hopefully in the world. This is an eclipse in Libra. Libra is here to bring about balance, to bring about some kind of judgment that could lead towards equality, that could lead towards fairness, that could lead towards a balancing of the scales. I started talking about this ad nauseum last year when we began having these eclipses. We have been having these eclipses since October of 2023. Now, the South Node, where this eclipse is happening, it's a point in space where eclipses happen when a new or full moon is close enough to it. The South Node eclipse moved into Libra in July of 2023. And it will be there until next year, until early next year. But this is the last lunation that's going to be in Libra with the South Node that will be an eclipse. So again, there's a feeling of closure. It is a solar eclipse, so that is a beginning. So maybe we're beginning something that's going to help us close it. It doesn't mean that this won't still be a beginning of some kind, but again, we're wrapping something up in the area of our chart that contains Libra. So go and listen to your reading in the Chani app this week. I'm telling you, these things have a way of being so literal so much of the time. So I want you to think about the literal meaning of the house that this is happening in your chart and take a look at what you've been working on there for the last year. And I want you to think specifically about what it is you've healed in this area of your life. Because it's a South Node eclipse, it is about letting go. And I don't mean like you just let go of stuff and you just don't care anymore. I mean that like over the course of a long period of time, probably your lifetime, you chew on something, you work on something, you go up and down with something. And then there will come a time, if you're engaged with your healing practice and process, where you realize you don't have to hold on to the resentments, or you don't have to hold on to the stories or to the pain in the same kind of way, that you can relax your grip on the past to some extent for your own sake, not to even forgive anybody. I don't know if that's possible. If you can, if you have, great. But I think trying to force forgiveness is weird. But what I think we can do when we're ready, when it naturally occurs, is to open a little bit and to have a little bit more room inside of us so that when we reflect on the things that have harmed us, the people, the situations, the structures, that we don't pretend it didn't happen or paint it with rose-colored glasses, see it with rose-colored glasses, but that we are more spacious in our understanding of it, that we have a more like 360 type of view of a situation, that we get to become more human and we get to be more humane in our judgment of a situation. That's the kind of thing a South Node transit through Libra can help us with. It can also help us with letting go or shedding our need to people please or acquiesce or fawn or whatever your thing is. Because Libra wants everything to be fair, and sometimes in order to make something fair, it will not put itself on the scale. You know what I mean? And be like, okay, well, I'll just take myself out of the equation and then it'll be okay. But if I have needs, then, people are going to know that things are out of balance. And the South Node is here to help us clean that up and clear that up. So this is on a personal level. I want you to reflect back on the past year and what have you done away with and given up? What family members have you stopped trying to please? What situations in your life do you move into now with more of yourself in the equation, more of yourself on the scale, maybe your full self on that side of the scale? And of course, these eclipses have aligned with one of the most grotesque and horrific events in our lifetime. It has aligned with the events of October 7th and then the events thereafter, which is an absolute genocide in Gaza. So this is not just personal, right? This is how the personal and the political and the global and the local meet up. So I want you to think about how the reality of that situation has impacted you personally. That will be obvious. But also how it has impacted how you enter into relationships with your loved ones, your family members, your partners, your business, and your world. What have you learned about civil disobedience? This is an eclipse in Libra. So again, there's a tendency to want to make everything okay, but it's a South Node eclipse, so it's about rebalancing things. And part of what we've had to collectively rebalance is our own participation in the world that we want to live in, that we want to create and recreate. So we've seen uprisings the world over, protests for Palestine the world over. That must be you too, right? Like you fall into that greater equation. So if that was the first eclipse in October of 2023, and this is the last eclipse on October 2nd of 2024, how far have we come? I'm not saying that this eclipse is going to fix things or end things. Only we can do that. Only we can put as much pressure, steady, resilient, persistent pressure on the people that make the decisions. We have to pressure the people that are making decisions to be on the right side of history, to be in balance with the universe. Because an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. And we're really, I think, fighting in this moment to reclaim and restore the soul of the world. And that requires justice. That can't happen without justice. So, I'm not living in September of 2024. I'm recording this in August, mid-August of 2024. So I don't know what's going on at the end of September. Obviously, that won't be the only thing that the world is talking about. There will be all kinds of conversations about justice and balance and fairness, equity, in all the ways used by all the sides of the political spectrum. And I'm saying the conversations will be key because on Monday the 30th, the Sun and Mercury come together to form a cazimi. And then on Wednesday, the eclipse happens basically with that signature. A Mercury cazimi is a download of information, and it's happening right on the South Node. And when I tell you this is a wild configuration, I mean it. A Mercury cazimi on the South Node in Libra is going to have a lot to say about justice, about the scales and how they're tipped, and about how to come back into balance in this world. And of course, in our lives, right? This is also going to be about relationships. This is also going to be about the you and the me of it. This anything that gets balanced. What are we balancing things against? Are we balancing things against the ways in which empire says we should balance things against the ways in which capitalism and patriarchy, like this is their code of ethics. And like, are we balancing it against that? Or are we balancing things against an actual society that maybe we've yet to create, but that could have everyone's humanity intact at the core of it? That's what I want to balance things against. Okay, but I'm biased, I believe there's enough for everybody. I know. Okay, so this eclipses are always shadowy times, meaning the stuff that lurks in the shadows in our daily life, in our personal life, in our collective life usually gets exposed. And that's an important thing to remember because we want to be working with our own shadow material. As it comes up, as we become conscious of it, we want to be like, okay, that's the part of me that operates unconsciously. Good to know. I'm not going to banish that part of me. I'm not going to feel shame, or I may feel shame, but I'm not going to try to dwell there. I'm not going to condemn that part of me. This shadowy part of me is just trying to help me survive. But I am going to make it conscious, and I am going to take its hands off the steering wheel of my life and recommence with driving the ship of my life consciously as much as I possibly can, right? So what is the shadowy material that you're getting a glimpse of in your own life? And then, of course, in the larger world, what is the shadow of this moment, or who is enacting the shadow of this moment? Who are all the actors enacting that? And I want you to also really listen. Like, we need to spend the first couple days of this week in deep meditation. I don't mean sitting there and being quiet, although I would love that for you. I would love everybody to collectively meditate, especially on Monday. I think always, it's not like the answer, but it's a good part of it. On a personal level, we want to be attuning ourselves to the information that we're getting. We want to be attuning ourselves to the intuition that we have naturally, and that voice or that information that's wanting to come through us, because there is a great flood of information and an outpouring of conversation, it feels like, again, early in the week. Good day to, again, pay attention, listen in. Okay, the other thing about this eclipse is that it's ruled by Venus, and Venus is currently in Scorpio, which isn't a bad thing. It's just that Venus has a harder time, traditionally speaking, in Scorpio, and it cannot see this eclipse. So it cannot help the situation out, which is like not amazing. It means that pleasure consensus might be a little harder to get to or to come by. But Venus is also making a trine to Saturn that perfects on Friday. So there is some other thing that's going on outside of whatever's happening, being reflected by the eclipse, that's actually grounding. Venus is being grounded, or Venus and Saturn are getting grounded with each other. And there is a nice container for our feelings, or there's a nice container for our relationships. And so that is good. Now, the other thing that I want to mention, and I don't usually talk about this point, but Lilith is in the mix of this eclipse. And Lilith is, the black moon Lilith that I'm talking about, is again another point in space. And it is one of those points that speaks to the unbridled energy of, we could say, rage. We could say it is the archetype of saying something that shouldn't be said in polite company. It is the howling scream of Lilith, the night owl, that screech owl, those sounds that go off at night that you're like, what is that? That's partly Lilith, or that's one of Lilith's things, is that howling at night. Lilith is a lot of things. In an upcoming Down to Astro, we'll actually go into Lilith's myths and the placement of Black Moon Lilith. But all that to say, Lilith is the outsider. Lilith is the one that doesn't have to remain inside the group, doesn't have to remain in the comfort, but also the confines of what is socially acceptable. Lilith banishes herself from the Garden of Eden in one of the myths that she's associated with. She cannot be tamed and she cannot be restrained, and she's wild. And so when Black Moon Lilith is connected to something so precisely like this eclipse, we know that there's a wildness to this moment, and there is a need to say, I have been betrayed. There is a voice that says, oh, no, you don't, not with me. I will not stay here if there is not justice. I will not stay here if I am not part of the equation. She is the antithesis to the status quo. So I think this will be a very active week. I think that this will be, again, an important week for us to be practicing our listening skills, because this is a moment where the voices of the normally, I don't want to say unheard, because that implies that we're not listening to each other, but the voices of those marginalized come into the center and are very loud, and that's a good thing. We need to listen. Even if we don't agree with each other, we need to listen to what is going on so that we can strategize about how to hold the situation. How do we meet the moment? We can't just block out all the voices that we don't agree with or that are telling us something. There's canaries in the coal mine, and it might come in a way that we don't like. It might come in a form or a structure or a persona that we're like, ugh. And yes, we don't have to agree with and we don't have to validate, but we have to be like, what is that voice actually saying? And what does that mean for this moment? And how do I address it in the most stealth way possible? Mars is also square this eclipse, and Jupiter is trine it. Mars square it brings about a type of like fighting motif. Mars is in the moon's sign, so that's in some way, shape, or form maybe helpful. But with a Mars square to this eclipse, there's an edginess here. Last week, Mars squared the nodes, and I said, it's a little bit of a red flag for me. And now this eclipse is squaring Mars because the eclipse happens where the nodes are. So there is something here that we need to, again, parse out. Mars is a sharp object, and sharp objects help us to separate things. The separation can lead towards a pain or a woundedness or inflicting harm. But if we're going to be conscious about the tools we're being given, how do we use the sharpness of the moment to dissect the problem, to understand it? Then this eclipse is also being trined by Jupiter, thank God. The Mars square is a little closer than the Jupiter trine, but it still has a Jupiter trine. It still has a sense of hopefulness, and it still has a type of abundant thinking that's associated with it. So it's our jobs to channel that as strategically as possible. Speaking of strategic, on Saturday, Mercury makes that square, that exact square to Mars. And that's a difficult conversation. It's a biting conversation. It's a sparring conversation, which, it's good to go after in the name of justice the people that are attacking it. We have to be able to move towards conversations that are dicey and challenging and, yes, full of conflict in the most skilled, strategic, and conscientious way. We need to know what it is we're doing, know what the end result is that we want, and be undeterred in our ability to get there. Always on an eclipse week, I'm going to say, please stay grounded. please do your little breathing exercises and have enough water and have some good foods and go to sleep early and do all the things you know you need to do to take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. No one else is going to do it like you need to do it. Take care of yourself. The energy is unstable. This is an annular eclipse, so it's a ring of fire eclipse, right? So if we're thinking about how the ancients would have viewed this, they would have been like, oh my God, it's ominous. That is a really intense mark. It's awe-inducing. It's beautiful to some degree. It will be visible in some parts of South America, but the rest of the world won't see it. So this is more of like the impact of it more than most of us being able to witness it, or a lot of us being able to witness it. Y'all, I gotta say thank you again and again and again. Thank you for leaving us reviews in the App Store. It means the world to us. We read all of them. We take them to heart. Other people read them that have no idea what the Chani app is. Like, what is that app and why is it named that? We couldn't come up with a better name. Anyways, another story for another time, but they get to read your words and then they get to think, maybe this is actually a decent product. And it really just means the world that you would take that time to engage with the internet like that. Thank you. I wanted to leave you with this one called The Best. Worth every penny and more. Chani's interpretations of the stars anchor and inspire me. I love that Chani does not shy away from anything. Personal equals political. We are all related. It's true. All right, y'all. That's that. That is the read. This is a really important moment of closure. So when closure comes in your life, please be present to it. It's so easy for us to try to skip over moments of closure because it's uncomfortable, because it means we have to feel the grief of something ending or the grief of something never being the thing that we wanted it to be. We need to be able to be with those uncomfortable feelings of even regret and desire and an unfulfilled thing. And also know that as the thing in our life comes to a close or gets wrapped up or we have some type of closure, even if it's tiny, we are, as trite as it might sound, making room for something else. We're making space. And if South Node eclipses teach us anything, it is about this kind of like drain point, that we take the plug out of the dirty bath water, out of the dirty bath, and let the dirty bath water drain. It's time. We gotta let it go. We need to cleanse. And that is one thing that's really good to do, just as a practice during a South Node eclipse. Do your cleansing ritual. Take some kind of straight object and just clear yourself. Take a shower and say, I'm cleansing my aura. I'm cleansing my energy. Take a bath, cleanse it, but let it go. Let it drain. This is a very exfoliating type of signature. So literally go to the spa and exfoliate. Go to the spa in your bathroom, go to the spa at the spa, whatever it is. But like symbolically, literally, let's get rid of this layer. Okay, it's time. It's going to feel really good to be shiny and new. Maybe not in the process, but after. It really is. So be present to whatever is wrapping up. Be with the feelings that it might bring about. Be with the knowledge that you're clearing space for more sweetness and more love and more abundance. And yes, hopefully more justice in your life and in the world. Okay, y'all. Come back next week. We'll talk about a very buoyant Sun trine Jupiter moment. And we'll talk about restabilizing after this eclipse season. Bye for now.